essentially convicted in the media. You don't have to read but a few articles to see how negative they are about him. He has a right to have this information withheld, brought out in public, so that people can see it's not this neat little package. So people can start to wonder if Brian's innocent. Your Honor, Brian is innocent.
Listen up, the ashes stir, phoenix wings unfurl, seeking truth beneath the blur. Turnings for the lax, they meet the blur. Out the flames I rise, wings scorched but unbroken. Truth's the blaze I wield, every rhyme's a token. In the nest we move, hearts stump in unison. Searching for the light where the system cuts our wisdom. Built on lies and steel, they boxed us in cages. Now we break the locks, rewrite history's pages. Innocent until proven guilty, that's the oath we recite. Under this constitution we ignite the night. We rise like a phoenix and sink, we claim the street. Nest seekers united, our freedom can't be beat. Stand up when one falls, yeah we got your back. In a free land unbroken, we launch the righteous attack. Justice for the voiceless, break the chains of deceit. Innocent till proven guilty, our victory's complete. System cracked at the seams, built for just a few. We rip apart the scheme, bring the truth into view. Movement swells like thunder, souls fueled by conviction. Phoenix souls aligned, demanding our new vision. Marching on the courthouse, banners paint the sky. Echoes of freedom roar, watch the old guard comply. No more hidden verdicts, no more secrets sold. Every voice is a weapon, every story be told. Innocent till proven guilty, that's our final decree. Under this constitution we stand forever free. Phoenix in the dawn, truth ignites the sky. Together we stand tall, no more asking why.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to Phoenix Talks. I'm Phoenix and let's talk. So today is Thursday, the 25th of August, and I am so glad to see many of you back. A lot of OGs in the house, and I'm going to say hello. Welcome, Patty, Christina. Thank you for all you do. Shout out to all my beautiful 3 mods that rotate and are here when they can. Amanda B, shout out to you. And all of you that are coming and joining in. XO Pink, love your name. XO Stinger. Love it. Hey, Lori, welcome. Eyes wide open. OG in the house. Miss Charlene, welcome in. Yes, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And I hear you. I hear you. If not, remember, if they start to disappear, we got you covered, girlfriend. Because you know what? This repository right here will never go away until I say it goes away. Justice for all. You can get all the documents. They're loaded in PDF form, or they have links. If the links disappear, I have the documents downloaded and safe kept in 3 different locations. So we will always have a repository for these documents. They won't be going away here, baby. So welcome in. That's just a little side note there. Thank goodness you said that. What's the website? It is Justice for All, FOURALL spelled out. Justice for All. And you can see that on the left side, there is all the court documents link. Letter, sample letter to the DOJ if you want to send the DOJ a letter. There's a gallery of videos that I'm got to finish uploading. There is a petition and the Autism Innocent Project. So there's the website. Thank you so much for asking. Hi, Brian. Welcome in. Rosie, welcome in. Thanks for listening. Lisa, welcome in. And Ryan Anderson, welcome in. How are you? I'm great. Kim, thank you. I love you guys being here. You guys give me a lot of good feedback, and I'm open for more feedback, believe me. And there is the website. Thank you, Christina, my handy dandy mod. I appreciate it, all 3 of you. So what are we talking about today? Somebody made the comment, it's enough already. Stop, Phoenix. We don't have time to stop here, guys. We got to keep moving because this ball is rolling fast and faster every day. It gets close to no appeal and possibly, unfortunately, no PCR because it costs money. And we have to find an attorney that will take on this case that is not afraid of the state of Idaho. And that is just the bottom line truth. Okay? And yeah, it was recommended that we get the water bill, that we FOIA the water bill from the city to see how much water was used that night. I agree. I agree how many loads of laundry they did, right? Logan from Bronx Tales tried to get a meter read and they won't let her have it. I'm sure because it's owned by the city and the city has just put the temporary restraining order in place to not be able to give out that private information. Even though it's the city, you can FOIA the request. They don't have to answer it, unfortunately. That's just something that they already know. They're trying to hide it all. Trying to hide it all now. So, what are we chit-chatting about today right now? Here we go. This was the whole article that prompted me to say, what the frickety frick are they talking about? Go look at the ISP documents. And this is part 2. This is Kohberger and Autism part 2. So this was the article that was written on the 18th that kind of spurred my interest to what the heck are they talking about? And as I showed you in supplement 0032 today, this individual, this statement was linked that said that the student was harassing, stalking, and sexually abusing his students at wherever university. Mark my word. That's what they said. Mark my word. And then this article goes on to talk about what we talked about earlier. Is basically the woman said she never met anyone who acted in such a condescending manner and wondered why people in power in the department did not address his behavior. Chickio, they made everybody go to a class and they did an investigation on Kohberger, and he was found to be not guilty by the WSU investigation. And they said it in their own words. There was no wrongdoing. There was no wrongdoing. Hello? They're not sharing that information because it doesn't sell. They'll never admit he's innocent because it doesn't sell. Whoever leaked this information should be held accountable, in my humble opinion. And of course, the disclaimer on the screen. You know the drill. You can read it. Now, many of the fellow students and instructors at WSU did not suspect his involvement in the killings, according to the police reports. But at least one fellow student noticed his behavior changed after the murders. Well, that's weird because I know what we read earlier and we discussed was that this one individual had noticed his hands were always like they were, but yet they tried to make it seem it was after the fact. I don't know, guys. Some of this media crap, it makes me think about who I watch and who I listen to. How about you? I mean, hopefully we're all kind of in the same boat here and we think outside of what they want us to think. And we're thinking for ourselves logically. Because this hasn't been a very simple, cut, dry case. I still don't see the smoking gun. I don't see the evidence against him. So we're going to get into the next document of choice regarding this issue, and that is document 0166. And this document is heavy. There's a lot to cover, so let's dive into it. So ISP again basically come out with Idaho State Police Detective Sergeant Van Leuven. And he basically says he interviewed Washington State University, redacted, born in 1960. Well, I Googled WSU, and I'll let you see. WSU, criminology, 64 years old, because he would be today. And lo and behold, look what popped up. So, of course, I click on it, and it gives me John Schneider. And I'm just curious, just a little curious. So, of course, I Google again, and I'm making sure that I got the right John Schneider because I want to make sure if this is actually him. And then I get, yeah, this is him. He's got a CCP lab on site, and it's actually a division of governmental studies and services of the Criminal Justice Department at WSU, after he served as public defender in Whitman County for over 30 years. Over 30 years. Wow. He's developed an extensive working knowledge of police practices and procedures in the context of criminal investigation, ranging from social contacts to Terry stops to search, seizures, and prosecution. Okay, that's interesting. And I wanted to Google, what's a Terry stop? Here it is. I'll just share it with you. A Terry stop is a brief definition of a person by law enforcement based on reasonable suspicion. I don't have a background in anything, folks. Ex-military, I'm dumber than a rock. I don't know any of this stuff. I'm just a grandma and, a mom and a wife. And so I Google stuff all the time. I want to know. Don't you ever just get in your mind something that you just want to know? Yeah, we're just a bunch of nothings looking at stuff that, yeah. So anyways, it's based on reasonable suspicion that the individual is involved in criminal activity. So are you basically just telling me, and mind you, I've been married to law enforcement in the past. Are you just basically telling me that if I look suspicious, they can stop me? And they assume that I'm involved in criminal activity? Or are you trying to tell me if I don't use my turn, blinker, signal, then that's based reasonable suspicion? Okay. Just trying to get this straight. Because if somebody just thinks that an individual is involved in criminal activity, that's kind of scary. It's a legal concept originated from the U.S. Supreme Court, Terry versus Ohio, which established that police can stop and question a person if they have specific and basically true facts suggesting that a person may be involved in a crime. So if I don't signal or I don't stop at a stop sign, then that means that they can definitely stop me because I've done something. I've broken the law of not stopping at a stop sign. And then they can do whatever they want after that. But they can't just look at me because I've not done anything wrong and say, oh, they must be involved in criminal activity. Okay, I get it. And it says the stop may also involve a limited frisk for weapons if the officer believes the person can be armed and dangerous. Okay, well, John, thank you for that. You've been involved in that. Greatly appreciate it. And so, I'm reading on a little bit further about what his background is. More recently, his work has involved community outreach in a number of different subjects, which along with his legal training and experience will prove valuable in both focus group and interview activities of our research. Well, shoot, what's the research? Doesn't say. Has a project overview. Here's the research team. You guys can go and check out every individual, which I really encourage you to. And you can also see who the students are that work with him and their initials. And the project overview is Crime, Cannabis, and Police. It's an NIJ-funded research project, which he's been cited in many research studies, many. And you can go on to read this and basically background and legalization of marijuana and law enforcement and crime, provide timely practice advice to state, local, and international crime justice agencies and their effects of legal marijuana legalization. Wow. It doesn't say what their recent studies are. This just shows you something that they've done in the past, because this symposium was 2018 And then the program in the research 2019 doesn't say anything up to date on this project. But that's what they were studying. Were they studying a new project? Makes me wonder. But it does say 2 questions frame the research that will be conducted in the next 3 years, 2017 to 2020. So I wonder what other projects he was working on that they just haven't made public. Okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But let's start reading what he says about Kohberger. Okay? So this was the second time he was interviewed. The first time was on the date of Kohberger's arrest. And let me share this with you. The first time that they interviewed him was on the day of Kohberger's arrest, December 30th, 2022. Second time was January 3rd. And the third time was January 11th. So they interviewed this guy 3 separate times. They wanted to get information, discuss his interactions, and also what he thought of Kohberger. And this says, of his former teaching assistant, Brian Kohberger. Again, they spelled his name wrong. Then they put him as white male on this. Now he's a different, I don't understand this. So, Sergeant sits down, starts interviewing him, and he basically starts on December 30th. That's the date of Kohberger's arrest. I interviewed redacted at Moscow Police Department. I was joined in this interview with ISP Sergeant Jess Stennett. Prior to becoming redacted at redacted, worked at a redacted in Whitman County in the Washington State. So I know that I got the right guy, right? He was a prosecutor in Whitman County. And he began working for them in the late 1990s, bring it up to date. That's almost about 30 years. So I can say we safely narrowed this one down. Working in blank and continuing his work with blank, splitting his full-time studies, governmental studies and services, by the way. And in 2018 and 2019, he became full-time at the, I would say, WSU. Okay? All right, we got that. So then you look and you think, okay, so blank knew Kohberger was going to be one of his blank teaching assistants in June or July of 2022. He didn't meet Kohberger in person until August. Okay, so we know Kohberger arrives ready for the school year. August is go time. Kohberger was an incoming PhD student in the department. He knew Kohberger was from a small private school back east. Said Kohberger seemed sharp and personable enough. Okay, well, we get that. Obviously, this, professor, this professional, agrees that he was personable enough when he first met him. He had not read Kohberger's master dissertation. Well, you've got a TA coming in and you don't read somebody's master's dissertation, you're just going to let anybody come in and teach your students that you're responsible for. And I thought to myself, what do these other students say about this professor? So, of course, knowledge is power, girlfriend. I go and I Google him. John Snyder, Criminal Justice Department, Washington State University. What do the students think of Professor Snyder? 78% would take his classes again. 2.4% level of difficulty. Overall grade, awesome, great, good, okay, awful. What? Why would somebody rate their professor awful? So I'm reading some of these grading. They're basically grading professors, right? This is a standard website you can go to. And I'm a little curious on what are they grading him so harsh in. So of course I go work backwards, right? I'm going to go work backwards. At the time, did anybody critique him in 2022. So you scroll down, more ratings. Okay, so August. Let's go August 2022. There was somebody else that rated him in April, by the way, really, really bad. Okay. And I was just curious to see back then what they were basically saying. And so April 27, 2022, grade A-, quality 1, difficulty 3. Have seen a lot of great reviews for this professor, but I have had a terrible experience. When I attended his office hours, he belittled me and offered no help. Absolutely no communication between TA and professor. Some assignments were tough and some were super easy. Everything got postponed and had no set due date, plus unclear expectations. Whoa. Okay. So, of course, I went back a little further and I just wanted to see how difficult other people thought he was. Well, it gets even better. Okay. Some graded him good, more difficult. And then I started reading the good reports. And the good reports on him basically said, this professor, most lectures about the materials and his personal experience with these projects in their personal law career. Without a doubt, one of the most fun and engaging lecture-heavy classes I've ever taken. Okay, he gets to talk about himself all the time in his lectures. Okay. So the next one I read, it says the course outline was not followed at all. Now, this is someone who wanted structure, right? This isn't what you're getting when you take his course per the person before. We're supposed to have 4 exams, including the final, but instead had one prior to the final, making the final worth 325 points. And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, what is going on? So the professor's not following any type of guideline or curriculum. He's just going on the fly. Okay, I get it. Maybe he's got a busy life. He's got all kinds of other things that he's got to worry about. This was December 17th, 2022. Also, he does not inform you when assignments are due. The lack of structure makes it very hard to complete coursework when sick in general. Whoa. You guys can go back and read some of these lectures. Were not structured. He basically talked about whatever he wrote down on a notepad, but his stories were interesting. Both our midterm and final were taken online. He used Sage Vantage, an online program platform, which we could read the textbook and answer questions. Now, mind you, this was during COVID. A lot of stuff was online. Only had to write a few essays. Overall, he's a pretty nice guy. Very chill. Lectures are interesting. Doesn't bring about, talk about the book much. You got to buy a $300-$400 book and he doesn't talk about the book. What the heck? Right? College isn't cheap, guys. The books alone are more expensive than some of this stuff out here. So, I'm going through the lectures and what they're saying about, who John Schneider is. Very interesting things. So then I go back and I look at his, let me just go back one more. I go and I look over his, curriculum, what he's doing over here, what he's doing. Let me just share this real quick. I get it. So I'm going to go back to the ISP document. And it seemed to check out, right? So he didn't read his master's dissertation. And Blake had no part in Kohberger's acceptance to the PhD program or that he was going to be assigned Kohberger as a Blake. So the TAs just get handed to whoever they are in the departments and somebody else picks them. So he didn't read any dissertation. So I asked Blank about a couple of incidents of unprofessional behavior associated with Kohberger. This is the investigator asking him, allegedly. that I had read a letter in a faculty advising Kohberger that he had lost his TA position. He said the first incident that occurred with Kohberger was a time when blank was in our office and was wanting to leave to go home. This was on a Friday. He said Kohberger showed up at the end of the day and wanted to talk. And it was pretty clear that he wanted to leave and that Kohberger wanted to talk. Blank said it was not his first time this happened with Kohberger, where he would show up late in the day and wanted to talk. Okay, so let me make sure I understand this. This is a professor, and this is somebody who likes to leave early, does his own lecture, there's no structure, and then when a student or TA comes in and wants to talk, maybe about studies or work, that it's inconvenient. That's what I read. That's what I got. Then he said his behavior had bothered him for a while. I wonder what kind of behavior it was. Blank said he would typically have his 40 hours in by the end of Thursday and did not want to work late on Fridays. There you go. I just said that. And resented it when Kohberger would show up to talk on Fridays. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. It's not like you were working in the prosecutor's office, worked Monday through Thursdays and didn't show up at, Fridays and still got paid. But he put all his 40 hours in by the end of Thursday and was ready to take Friday off. And then a student would show up and want to talk about something, and then he was inconvenienced, guys. Now, I'm not saying, just let me say this. I'm not being mean-spirited. Conduct your own research, draw your own conclusions. I am sharing my opinion. And this channel doesn't offer any legal, medical, professional advice. In my humble opinion, it sounds like this guy was done working on Thursday, didn't want to be interrupted or bothered on Fridays. And when Kohberger was at the end of the week, for most students, they're ready to go out and party. Well, this guy looks like he's ready to read his books and write whatever he needs to do for the next week. So he would show up on Fridays to talk. I asked him what Kohberger would want to talk about. He said nothing in particular, and that there was nothing remarkable about any of the conversations. He just said that the subjects that were discussed in the past involved how to brief a case, how to deal with plagiarism, or just in general reaction activities on the Palouse. Well, I'm just going to stop right there, because the discussion of how to brief a case is important and related to the work at hand. That was the professor's job. How to deal with plagiarism? He's a professor. How did he deal with plagiarism? I mean, as a TA, you want to make sure that you're on track and on board with whatever your professor is telling you, so that you can have something to bounce off of each other and say, well, you told me this. I need to know the guidelines. I need to know the rules, so I follow them. Because obviously, Kohberger is a rule follower. This guy is no rules, right? Because I wanted to understand this professor, I went out and did the research. So then he goes on to say, at 10 to 20 minutes, there was an exchange that perturbed blank, where Kohberger would not get the point and let so-and-so go home. Okay. Did by any chance this professor say, I've got a hard stop at this time and then I need to go and you'll have to figure another time for us to talk? Because that is what people with autism need. They need structure. They need that transition time. I've only got 10 minutes and then we need to stop and move on to something else. Or I have a hard stop at 5:10 and I have to be out the door to get home by 5:30 to eat with the wife. Right? Time for change, you got it. Rules for thee, but not for me, says the professor. You got it. Big personality clash. Absolutely. Rule follower, not so much of a rule follower. Now, at one point, he told Kohberger that he was snarky. Kohberger told him that he was snarky. Okay? So, I'm a little old. What does snarky mean? Critical or mocking in an indirect or sarcastic way. Well, this guy with 30 years in the prosecutor's office, now a professor that doesn't want to talk about business so that he can have better expectations set and rules to follow, he was told that he was snarky. Mind you, this is old school, 60-something-year-old guy that he probably was snarky. And I'll be honest, sometimes I'm snarky. But I think Kohberger didn't have that little intuitive switch, which many call a filter. And the professor may have got a little butt hurt. Okay, in my humble opinion, allegedly. Blank became tired and frustrated Blank became tired and frustrated and told Kohberger to leave his office, and he did not. Blank got up and walked out of his office. He said Kohberger followed him out of his office and continued talking to him, probably because Kohberger didn't understand and he didn't get the answer and he didn't get the social cue because he has autism. Gee whiz. I think this guy needs some training in autism. I think most of the professors, most of the police, a lot of people need some training in how to deal with autism. Because with the rise of autism that I talked about the other day, boy, do I know this. Blank got up, walked out of his office. He said Kohberger followed him out of his office and continued talking with him. Blank said he walked down the hall to the main office where he knew Kohberger had some run-ins with others. What? He walked down to the hall to the main office where he knew Kohberger had some run-ins with others. Well, why did he even say that? He went down to the office to complain? Wow. Oh, there's a lot to unpack here, guys. It just makes me irritated. After several late afternoon encounters, Blank wasn't sure if Kohberger was trying to curry favor or whether he was trying to control blankety-blank redacted time. At some point, redacted concluded Kohberger was power tripping, and by using time and preventing him from leaving his office was one way of controlling blankety blank blank blank. Advised that he had over 8 blank in the past, and he's never had any problem with any of them. Okay, so he had over 8 TA assistants in a PhD program, and he's never had any problem with any of them. How many of those 8 had autism? How many of 8 of those TAs had autism? I'll wait. I'll be dead in the ground before we find that out. I guarantee you none of them had autism. None. So, Blank talked about Kohberger walking and talking with him as blank walked to his car. Blank remembered Kohberger bragging about outsmarting the parking regulations on campus. Well, how did he outsmart parking regulations on campus? What did that have to do with the frickin' tea in China? What kind of questions did this detective ask him? I mean, seriously, I don't know if you guys can see that. What kind of questions was he asking him? I mean, how do you outsmart the parking regulations on campus, guys? How did Kohberger figure that one out? It would take me like years to try to figure this one out. How in the world? Anybody have any idea? Anybody? Yeah, a little sensitivity training would go a long way. He tried a quarter to a string and pulled it out. That's good, Dustin. And I love your picture, Mike. Mike Kozowski. He tied a quarter to a string and put it in and pulled it out. Aren't those now automated? Aren't they automated? I'm asking in regards to number, hold on a minute, 6. Kohberger was bragging about outsmarting the parking regulations on campus. How did he what are the regulations on campus? I don't know. He played fishing. Please tell us how. Yeah, I want to know. I don't want anybody to say, oh, you heard it from Phoenix how to beat the parking. But you can kind of Google that, right? WSU parking regulations, how to beat it. I want to know. They have to familiarize themselves with parking. Here's some help. Oh, here's some tips to beat parking regulations. Read the parking rules and ensure you understand the rules. Understand the appeals process if you receive a parking ticket. Maybe that's what he was talking about. I don't know. Pay tickets promptly. I don't know. Maybe somebody can go research that. It's funny. There are multiple parking lots that could be affected at WSU. I don't know. Do you get in early and leave late? I have no idea. I don't know. He learned how to beat the system. Okay, I get it. All right, so then he goes on to say, Blank talked about difficulty in getting Kohberger to complete his task as a teaching assistant. Blank said he had been advised by department higher-ups to be more direct in making his expectations clear to Kohberger. Well, with the lax professor, according to all the feedback on the website I shared with you, it seems like perhaps he didn't set expectations properly. He wasn't clear because you've got a meeting of the minds butting heads together when one wants to be rigid and follow rules and the other doesn't even set the rules. That could be a huge indication he's not used to handling somebody with autism. And then he goes on to say Kohberger advised Kohberger's behavior didn't really change from the time before the homicides or after the homicides. Now, guys, remember the article I just showed you that said that this professor said one thing? This is the statement. This is the statement. Blank advised Kohberger's behavior didn't really change from the time before the homicides or after the homicides. At least the professor is being very truthful and honest. And then the professor said he never received any direct complaints about Kohberger interacting with any of the undergraduate students in his capacity as a teaching assistant. So the professor never received any direct complaints. Now, I know about chain of command, ex-military here. If you have a problem with someone, you go to the individual first. If that person doesn't understand, then you seek other counsel. You go to the professor or the TA. If you don't get anywhere with that, then you go higher. This professor is basically saying, allegedly, if this is him, like I said, he fits the profile, he never received any direct complaints. Ever. To the professor. 9. Blank further advised the female grad students didn't like Kohberger because he was that off-putting. Well, we already discussed some of them thought he had autism and didn't get along with him because he was standing up for himself. And he wasn't going to be bullied, especially by females. Yeah, factually innocent. I think we can all agree to that. And if you're new to my stream, we're reading documents, we're looking at evidence, we're looking at facts, we're applying logic. And if you don't see it, stick around. You may see it. You got free will. Read it for yourself. And then we can have a healthy, intelligent conversation. So the students didn't like Kohberger because he was that off-putting. Blank said we should talk to a female front office staffer who was an undergrad student working on a work-study program who made complaints about Kohberger's behavior. Oh, maybe that's the person's witness statement that we read earlier today. A front office staffer who was an undergrad student working on a study program who made complaints about Kohberger's behavior. That makes sense. Now, Blank advised that she had secondhand information and he had made several of the female PhD students very uncomfortable because of the interactions they had with Kohberger. I asked Blank about which grad students we may want to interview that may have had a problem with Mr. Kohberger. Blank advised me there were 2 students from Blank. He said they were fellow PH students named Blank. Last name not said, later identified as Blank and Blank. And advised we should speak with faculty members blank, blank, blank of grad students. I asked if he'd ever socialized with Kohberger. This is a kicker. Blank advised me that he attended a mixer at Blank where 20 to 25 people from the department attended. He was accompanied by his wife, and he recalled nothing unusual during that mixer. But the rumor on the street was that he had a whole bottle of wine. Somebody who doesn't drink. Wow. So then he goes on to say 12. Blank talked about the process by which Kohberger's behavior eventually led to his removal as a teaching assistant. He advised he initially supported Kohberger until after a second event that redacted, could not remember the details of. Blank advised Kohberger's removal was a result of a cumulative effect of his behavior. It doesn't sound like Brian Kohberger had an IEP. And I don't mean to sound facetious about this at all. It sounded like he was really struggling. Moved away from home, had a great opportunity, really struggling. Now I know why he was on the phone for hours with his mom, because his mom was in support of him finishing his education. Alleged. So after the homicide occurred, he said he didn't consider the possibility that Kohberger had committed the murders. Now we are talking about a professor at WSU, a former 30 years, guys, 30 years in the prosecutor's office. And this professor said he did consider the possibility that Kohberger had committed the murders. characterized this as a fleeting thought, and considered Kohberger's power-tripping control tendencies in addition to be socially challenged. Advised Kohberger had alienated and irritated several female PhD students, as well as at least one female professor with his behavior. But then he said Kohberger never discussed knives or edged weapons. Never, ever. We asked about the survey Kohberger had conducted with the persons who had committed the crimes. I'm going to read it again. We asked, redacted, about a survey Kohberger had conducted with persons who had committed crimes. He said he was unaware of this and we should contact blank staffer about Kohberger's PhD activities. Weird. Blank talked about a conversation he had with Kohberger early on where they discussed the idea of sexual harassment. Blank knew that Kohberger had alienated himself from the female grad students by this time, and that includes 6 or 7 women. Well, it sounds like he wanted to separate himself so he wouldn't be accused of any sexual harassment. It's either do or die. It's either you do or you don't. So he alienated himself from the female grad students so he wouldn't be accused of it. Kohberger came up with a line of thought where he said, what if Kohberger had heard about blank behaving inappropriately with women, and what would blank do to defend himself against a false allegation? Blank found this line of thought to be troubling and thought Kohberger was trying to put himself in a position of power. I think perhaps he was really worried that somebody was going to file charges against him of sexual harassment that wasn't true. Because it sounds like they were on a witch hunt. And that's just my humble opinion. Yes, he's awkward. Yes, he has autism. But these people were bullying him in a professional environment. Ever. I've never seen this so bad among academia. We have all these programs, stop the bullying, enough with the bullying, but this is coming from professionals teaching others in a professional setting that are the next individuals that are going to lead some of these key positions in the country. Guys, Blank said he did not remember any physical injuries visible on Kohberger after the homicides occurred. Well, of course not, Mr. Professor, because his DNA was not there. His blood contact DNA was not there. He didn't have any injuries, like some people are saying, but this is a professor, a professional, the professional former district attorney, prosecuting attorney, a lawyer, saying that he didn't have any visible injuries after the homicide. Well, we can check that off. We can definitely check that one off. The conversation was recorded and later provided to Moscow to be placed into evidence. Then they interviewed him again for the second time. They spoke via telephone. Advised after thinking more about Kohberger, he considered the issue about where Kohberger was power tripping or just socially inept. So this guy reflected. He reflected about, dude, maybe he's got some socially wrong cues. The professor was reflecting. He considered that it didn't matter. Blank talked about having coffee with the female staffer named Blank and concluded that Kohberger was power tripping. Blank said he thought she was right on her opinion. Power tripping or socially inept. Autism is not about power tripping, guys. Totally awkward. Totally. 19 said Kohberger Blank said that Kohberger lived near to where Blank would park while at work. Said he found it odd because after Kohberger was arrested and the media reported where Kohberger lived, advised that the building depicted by the media as Kohberger's residence was completely different than the one Kohberger had indicated to Blank. Did Kohberger even really live where he was said to be living? 19 is very questionable. 19? Does that contradict? Interesting. The media reported where Kohberger lived, advised the building depicted by the media as Kohberger's residence was completely different than the one Kohberger had indicated to blankety blank. Blank also wanted to make it known that he was willing to assist the Latah County prosecutor in this case if he could be of service. Now, he was the prosecutor of Whitman County for 30 years. All right, chat. How long has Bill Thompson of Latah County been a prosecuting attorney? Prosecuting attorneys know each other. Think about that for a minute. He said, this professor said, I'll help you. Let the Latah County prosecutor know that he could be of service. I asked Blank about Kohberger's research work. Blank advised me we follow up with the program director and oversaw Kohberger's research. He didn't even know. He didn't even know about Kohberger's research. That just sounds weird. 9,233 years, Dustin says. 35 years. It says it's freaking awful. You can't prosecute someone you personally didn't like before an accused crime. Yeah, I agree. So then this conversation was recorded and placed on a disc with all the other audio recordings from blankety blank interviews. Now, they go back and they interview him again. They went back again. And he says, get this. One key little 3-letter word in here. They brought in the FBI. And he spoke with blankety blank at blank. Blank advised him he had spoken with people in the blank about this incident. Specifically, he had spoken with blankety blank blank and reminded blank about a test question regarding the difficulty in prosecuting rape crimes. Now, why are they bringing, this is like going to a fight and taking a knife to a gunfight. I hope you understand what I'm saying. You ever remember seeing Indiana Jones? Indy standing there and the bad guy comes out and the bad guy's got this big, huge blade. And what does Indiana Jones do? Pulls out a gun and shoots him, right? You don't bring a knife to a gunfight. So the FBI now comes in and wants to talk to him the third time. And he says, I want to ask about a test question regarding the difficulty in prosecuting rape crimes. Blank had asked Kohberger to look at the question he had written and make a revision to the question. This is the FBI asking him. When Blank received the revised question back from Kohberger, he found it to be useless because the language in the question would be triggering to many students. Blankety Blank advised the language was dismissive of the victims. Blankety Blank gave me a printout of his original question and revised question Kohberger had produced and had given Blankety Blank on November 10th, 2022. I also scanned these printouts and have placed them on the same disk that contains audio recordings of this and other interviews. Okay. Now, let me say something in preface here with this question. If you have autism and you have no filter and you socially are not politically correct, as I've seen in those with autism, and the professor was not educated in autism and asked him to go back because socially this question was not correct, like politically correct or worded well, and maybe he was looking at it from a crime perspective rather than a social perspective. Could that have happened? Probably. Makes sense to me. I don't know if it makes sense to you, but if you care for someone or have somebody in mind that has autism, that would make sense. So 24 says we further discuss incidents with Kohberger and have already been covered in previous interviews. These topics included issues he had with females in the program, as well as discussion regarding the process of his TA position being terminated. He discussed his past experience with TAs compared with current TAs. Discussed his opinion that Kohberger should have kept on as a TA because he believed that was an obligation to continue to honor their commitment and offering him a TA position. Well, frickin' hold on 1 minute. Dude's sitting in jail, already arrested for a quadruple homicide, and you're sitting here telling the FBI he should have honored the position and not terminate him on December 19th? What the heck is going on? Now he automatically gets some type of conscience? What? What in the hell is going on in this guy's head? We should have kept him on as a TA, but he's sitting in jail pending murder charges for 4 people. And now he wants to talk about he believes his obligation to honor the commitment and offering him a TA position. He said Kohberger relied on that commitment. And if Blank was going to remove that from him, Blank needed to make sure they had thoroughly documented the reasons why. That's like getting fired from the military. They're not just going to let you go because you've got a bad exam or you bad PT testing or bad. No, they document along the way. And when they're ready to can you, and it didn't happen to me, I'm just saying this is in general, that they write you up at every turn, and then when they go to fire you or say you're not competent to be in the military or at a job, then they throw all this stuff at you and say, see, we told you so. Wow. But get this point. Let me get this across. So everything the media has said about Kohberger and WSU is not true. A, they had an investigation. There was no wrongdoing. It was in a court filing. Anne already threw that out there. Then you open yourself up to saying that he was trying to sexually harass people, but there was no formal complaint or investigation. Then you want to say he committed these crimes because he was on a power trip. And then you want to point fingers at somebody, but then the professor says alleged this. He was concerned that removing Kohberger from a TA position without doing so would open blank up to a civil lawsuit from Kohberger. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Feisty Phoenix is going to tell you the way it is. Kohberger can sue the pants off of everybody in this situation, folks. Can you believe this? Can you believe this? Blank talked about the situation. He's telling the FBI this, guys. This isn't just some Idaho investigator. This is the FBI he's telling this to. And this, friends, it doesn't say if he spoke with him in person. It just said he spoke with him. It didn't say he went and met him. He just spoke with him. And it sounds like so-and-so is now covering their ass, in my humble opinion. So, Blank talked about a situation where he was meeting with Kohberger in his office to prepare final exams for his undergraduate class. Kohberger announced that he had a Zoom meeting with another student. Blank assumed Kohberger was advising he had to leave for the meeting and could not help with the exam prep. Instead, Kohberger proceeded to the Zoom meeting in Blank's office, preventing Blank and Blank from preparing for the exam. Blank had to tell Kohberger to leave his office. Well, where else would he go to a Zoom meeting with another student if that was where he worked out of? Wow, that's wild. Blank advised Blank had him with a slightly different version of the revised exam question reference above. Blank did recall discussing this question with Blank. We discussed Kohberger's tendency to stare at people. Blank thought that Kohberger did this in a way to display power or dominance. Blank mentioned a senior named Blank that complained that Kohberger stared at her a lot in class and made her feel uncomfortable. Well, that was probably the person that we talked about earlier in their witness statement, which you know how I feel about that. In my humble opinion. 28. He advised, Blank advised he had not observed any inappropriate behavior from Kohberger aimed at any undergraduate students. So here we go, CYAing all over the place. He said he thought Kohberger did a good job in correctly poorly written answers, and he did not observe bias or inappropriate tone in grading. One student made a complaint about this, but blankety blank did not see it. Nothing further. I digress. Wow. Talk about a CYA meeting with the FBI, which is wild that they even went to this specific professor. Was this because maybe somebody had complained about the harassment that Kohberger was getting in the media with WSU and the staff and the faculty and people talking? Could that be? Could that be? Because I went back to look at the repository to see if there were any certain filings around that time frame. And you got to go all the way back to 2023 and see if there was anything in coincidence or anything filed around those time frames, anything at all. And you know, the website for the repository for Idaho has been kind of wonky, especially in this case. So you can go back to the 23. You can scroll all the way down and go back to January. This case went national worldwide, reaching even my family in Germany and Italy. If we let them get away with this, we're not just allowing corruption. We are setting a dangerous precedent for the future. You are absolutely correct, Bella. Absolutely correct. So, of course, I went down to the repository to see what was going on. And in the beginning of January was the non-dissemination order. They wanted everybody to shut the heck up. Don't talk about this. Don't talk about this because you guys could be really harming us. I don't want the investigators talking. I don't want the law enforcement talking. I don't want attorneys talking. I don't want agents of attorneys talking. I don't want anybody talking about this case. We're going to seal it and we're going to be hush hush and we're just not going to do anything anymore. And the media, they ran with this. They ran with it. And then they came back and they said, nope, we're going to amend this non-dissemination order. We're going to amend it. And that happened on January 18th. And then started discovery. And that is when you see the FBI step in and go and interview people. Why is that? Why are we seeing the Idaho State Police go and interview a Washington professor? Did anybody question that? So you've got Idaho State Police who are in charge of this third-party investigation because Moscow asked them to help. They go and they interview a Washington resident professor, and then the FBI steps in. And then they step in. And then they say, and files this on the same day the FBI steps in, and they ask, well, we want everything to be submitted for discovery. And she says, there are no books, papers, documents, photographs, or copies or portions thereof in possession of the defendant at this time, which will be submitted at the time of trial. We want everything you have. And see, this isn't just about preparing for a death penalty case that takes years to prepare for. And they know this. But they wanted to hurry up and rush this process for a reason. And what do you think that reason was, folks? Why do you think they wanted to hurry up and rush this? Because perhaps the story was wrong, the narrative was crumbling, and they had to figure out how they would get out of this. Which is a sad way to be exposed, but hey, sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. They needed to save their butts. They needed to save the school's reputation. And I'm watching all your comments, and you guys absolutely know. They want to cover it up. Yep, like what happened today in today's hearing. They want to continue to cover it up. Because their narrative is falling apart. Because you know what? Pullman pulled a fast one. The state of police for Idaho, they pulled a fast one. They released all these documents to the public and nothing adds up, Moscow. Nothing adds up. They got the wrong person. And this wrong person may have outsmarted the criminal justice system. There's only a couple more days left, guys. I don't include the weekends. And I sure hope someone steps in to file something on his behalf. Because I don't, in my humble heart, I don't believe prison is for those factually innocent with autism. Drop your comments. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all you OGs in the house. Thank you for all the chats and the super chats and all the things that you guys do, all the information you send me. It is not going unread. It's not going unanswered. Thank you to all my mods here. I appreciate every single one of you. I know that another creator is going live and a lot of people like to go watch him. I am a guest on his show sometimes, but I look forward to seeing every single one of you in my next live, which will be the autism panel. So don't miss it. And that will be in about an hour. Be well.
Listen up, the ashes stir, phoenix wings unfurl, seeking truth beneath the blur. Turnings for the lax to meet the blur. Out the flames I rise, wings scorched but unbroken. Truth's the blaze I wield, every rhyme's a token. In the nest we move, hearts stump in unison. Searching for the light where the system cuts our wisdom. Built on lies and steel, they boxed us in cages. Now we break the locks, rewrite history's pages. Innocent until proven guilty, that's the oath we recite. Under this constitution we ignite the night. We rise like a phoenix in sync, we claim the street. Nest seekers united, our freedom can't be beat. Stand up when one falls, yeah we got your back. In a free land unbroken, we launch the righteous attack. Justice for the voiceless, break the chains of deceit. Innocent till proven guilty, our victory's complete. System cracked at the seams, built for just a few. We rip apart the scheme, bring the truth into view. Movement swells like thunder, souls fueled by conviction. Phoenix souls aligned, demanding our new vision. Marching on the courthouse banners, paint the sky. Echoes of freedom roar.
Essentially convicted in the media. You don't have to read but a few articles to see how negative they are about him. He has a right to have this information withheld, brought out in public, so that people can see it's not this neat little package. So people can start to wonder if Brian's innocent. Your Honor, Brian is innocent.